of those meaty little spots in between, it might have felt more like time was passing.
Yeah. Yeah. Trey, do you agree with us or are you wrong?
What's that?
That was a trick question.
Okay.
Do you agree with us or are you wrong? With your best friends Trey Sterling and Matt, the film schmucks. Hey everybody, it's the film schmucks. It's a new year, new me. I think we actually already had like 2 episodes since the new year, but we never addressed it. So 2022, year of the schmucks. This week we went with I love this era of movies. We went with V for Vendetta because we've been doing a lot of dramas, we've been doing a lot of tear jerkers. Not that this movie doesn't delve into it a little bit, but this is a fun action movie. I guess Well, we'll get into the review. We'll let you guys decide what type of movie this is. V for Vendetta. Sterling, you wanna jump right into it since this was one of your picks.
Yeah. I'll go for it. Um, well, it's kind of interesting you say action movie because I would say it definitely has the pacing of an action movie. It's a very frenetic, kind of quick pace to it, but there's not a whole lot of action when you look at the grand scope of it. It's a lot of dialogue, it's a lot of themes, kind of insightful quotes. There's a lot of quotes in this movie. Um, but my overall opinion is I think it's one of the more underrated comic book movies that I can remember. Even though that might sound cliche, I think this has a lot to offer. And I'm curious what you guys think because I think you guys have seen this before. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've seen it once
Okay.
before. Perfect. It was a
Okay.
perfect gap for me of watching it, because I believe the last time I watched it, I was maybe a freshman in college or something. I think I might have been like 18 years old. And I didn't really remember the movie. I remember some of the highlights. I kind of remember the gist of it. So it was interesting because I felt like I was watching it for the first time, really, um, which is kind of that good year gap year. But anyway, I don't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah. No. I kind of wanted to just get your thoughts because
I'll give you
I
my
mean,
thoughts right off the bat. I'll give you
yeah.
the juicy deets, my friend. Um,
Go ahead.
I like the movie a lot. I do. I think it's an enjoyable movie. It's interesting. Like I probably say dated too much on these reviews. I don't even think it's dated, but it's interesting when a moment in time, like in film, is happening. You don't notice that it's happening until later. It's like you watch this movie. It's from 2005. It feels like it's from 2005. Like something about the editing and the pacing and stuff. Like even the opening scenes, like some of the scenes. There's some great like cinematography and stuff in this movie. Um, it is to me, it can be a little bit held back. You sort of have to embrace some of the cheesiness of it because there's a little bit of cheese in the movie. The biggest thing that I have a difference on since the first time I watched it was I remember watching it before going, man, V is such a cool character. He's this like badass like vigilante. He's like smart. I thought he was a big dork when I watched it this time again. I was like, this guy's a dork. I'm surprised this guy doesn't have a fedora on. He's not tipping it and saying "milady," which he basically does. He's a little bit of an incel. Let's be honest, a little bit of a dork, but that doesn't take anything away from his character. And it actually, me and
Sure.
Christy were joking about it, but we're like, it makes sense that he's really awkward and weird because he's basically been living by himself in an underground bunker and he's just
Yeah.
watching movies. So it makes sense. So it's not actually a critique of the movie. I think the character's supposed to be sort of this way. Um, but
Well, it's interesting you say that because in the graphic novel, he actually is a lot more he has that kind of incel attitude. I feel like in the actual graphic novel, he's a little bit crazier too, which I think this movie in a couple scenes kind of touches on that,
mhm,
where you kind of feel like he might be insane, and he probably is insane,
yeah,
to some degree, but it goes way further in the original source material. So,
Trey, hit me with your best review Fire away.
God damn.
I
Cut
have
that out.
to
I'm so sorry. I'm
cut
embarrassed.
it.
I'm really
I
embarrassed.
have to. I gotta disagree with Matt. I mean, this movie is. I remember going to see this movie in the theater when I was 14 or 15, whenever it came out, and I did not like it. But I was telling my buddy Kyle, and when we watched, I'm like, it's because I was a kid. I was young. I didn't know what good movies were. I didn't, So I've watched it a few times since, and this is as close to a masterpiece as you can get to in my book. I mean, the writing. Either the writing is amazing or it's like horrible because the way he articulates himself, the way he puts whatever he wants to say in, like together to whoever he's talking to. I mean, like you're like, what did he say? What did that word mean? Like you're like, but you're engaged because he's such a cool character, like you said, Matt. And I just think I don't know. I guess you could say he's dorky, but like Matt Sterling said, he's been locked up. He looks like Deadpool underneath. He's all burnt up. I mean, come
Yeah.
on. But I just there wasn't enough of him. If that's another critique I would have, I would want more of him in the film. You know, because it
Mm.
was a lot of
A lot of
going
Padme.
back or Padme, whatever. Uh, so because they went a lot to the government and the
Yeah.
totalitarian. I can't even say that word. The how extreme the
Totalitarian.
government was, and I just thought, and I wrote this down. I said what I write down. I wrote down, um, kind of I wrote down it's like the Simpsons. This movie basically predicted the future in a way. I mean,
Um.
it looks at like the past with Hitler and how the ruler was, and it has a virus in it,
Yeah.
and taking away right stuff like that. Like anything you want to talk about today, whether it's right or wrong, it's kind of showing what some people view today or the past. I thought it was a
Yeah.
good look at the past and the future, and I couldn't believe I'm like
It's
looking at this movie like this could come out today
yeah.
about today.
It does a better job. A lot of dystopian movies are super dystopian. They're like Blade Runner, or they're like, you know what I mean. This movie, it feels like it's a little bit in the future, but it still feels closer to now, which I think is really one
Yeah.
of its strong suits. Because if they tried to make it be like, it's almost doesn't even feel like future. It feels like, I don't even know if they say what year it is. Is that mentioned in the comics, Sterling? I don't know if it's supposed to be in the future or if it's
Well,
just an alternate reality.
in the comics, it's like 1997.
Okay.
And I think the book was written in the late 80s, if I'm not
Okay. I didn't
mistaken.
know it was that old. I thought
So,
it was written in the late 90s or something, but or I guess I would have thought it was earlier, but
Well,
no.
in the
yeah.
movie, the lesbian is 30, and they say 2015 in the movie, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
Like when she's
Damn.
riding on the
Yeah,
toilet.
yeah, okay. Okay. I was wondering.
Okay.
I figured they did say it. I just didn't pay attention particularly to the year, but I do agree it's interesting. I think there's stuff like, people always go like 1984, man. We're living in 1984, and it's like, I don't know. I just recently read 1984, and I'm like, no, we're not. We're not living in 1984 at all. But this movie is more of like a stepping stone of like, it seems more like a reality. Not that 1984, the points, the stuff in it couldn't happen, but it's more that this movie, despite the theatrics and stuff of the character and stuff, it feels a little more like reasonable that this could happen.
Yeah.
Although it's
Hmm.
the movie is, if a conspiracy theory, like a hardcore conspiracy theory, was true. So it's like, it's on the
Yeah.
basis of that too. So it's interesting.
I
Well,
mean, well, it said former U.S. in Civil War, and then like said the virus going around, like because there's been talk, there's
Yeah.
always talks about Civil War and all that jazz, and
Yeah.
but the epidemic in the movie and the pandemic now.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of similarities. It's kind of crazy.
It was basically a lab leak.
yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And now I got to cut that word
Well,
out so we don't get the video banned. But
well, it was more so it wasn't even just a week, it was a coordinated effort by Creedy,
Pharma.
I think.
yeah,
Yeah, to get the government to have full control. So, um I mean, overall, I understand what you mean, Trey, when you say, "Oh, I want to see more of V because he is a cool character." But I think the movie uses him perfectly. I think there is such thing as showing too much of him or having too much of a great character. I think if you want to see more of him, that just shows how good of a job that they did with him, and the character work. So I get the criticism, but at the same time, I think it's about as perfect as amount of time that he's in the movie. But the main story of this whole thing in both the graphic novel and the movie is that it is a criticism of fascism
Mhm.
and authoritarian governments for sure. In the graphic novel, it's more, I would say it's more anarchist. I can't say the word anarchy
Yeah.
versus authoritarianism, is what I think is the struggle in the graphic novel. And in some ways in the movie as well, although I do think in the movie they try to make V a little bit more of a clear-cut good guy compared to the graphic novel.
Yeah.
Um,
I was wondering about that.
so
And I'll probably
yeah,
be asking you questions along the way because there's a lot of parts where I'm like, there's some parts in this movie that I'm like, I think this work would, I imagine this works better because I was like, this, they had a hard time pulling off some things that in a movie where I'm like, maybe this was better in the, done better in a comic book form.
yeah.
But
Well, there's so much complexity in the actual book that you can make it a mini series for sure.
yeah, well, I definitely wanna read it at some point. And while we're on the subject of V, I want to ask you guys. So that's another thing that I thought was different from the first time I watched it to now is that I thought of V when I was remembering the movie that he was like a clear cut, like he's this good guy. And then watching the movie now, I'm like, he is sort of like the bad guy in No Country for Old Men. Have you guys seen that?
Yeah, Anton.
Yeah, well, or the he's sort of he's actually, or maybe we could say the Joker. That's a better one. So the Joker, no, that's not right because he doesn't really have principles. I was trying to say sometimes you have a great villain is a villain who is very principled and is following through on those principles, like because they have this weird bent. And so the bad guy in No Country for Old Men is like a psychopath sort of, and he's a killer, but he also has this weird code that he goes by. I feel like
Yeah.
V is sort of the flip of that, where he's what happens if you have like a person who sticks completely to their principles, and it just happened to flip that he was kind of in a good way. Because overall, the actions and things he's doing are sort of this anti-fascist, sentiment, which is good, but he also does horrible things along the way.
Oh,
I mean, he's killing people who are bad people, but the thing that's interesting to me was one, he basically lets innocent people get killed at the beginning of the movie for his own stuff. And I missed something, but there's the people who he dresses up in Guy Fawkes masks at the beginning, knowing full well that the
yeah.
cops will think it's him, and they fire on an innocent guy and basically kill him. That was totally his fault. He didn't give a shit. And then obviously you can get to the part of the movie because this is a long part of the discussion, but he does horrible things as far as like literally torturing
Evie.
Evie, like torturing her. I mean, he kills the bishop or whatever because he's having sex with young girls. It's like, yeah, that could be a psychologically traumatic thing for this older priest to have sex with you. It's also psychologically traumatic to be like abused and tortured and held against your will in a thing. So he clearly is not necessarily morally a great good person, or like, oh, this is this great human being, but he's admirable in the sense that he has principles, but he does, because of his psychosis, he'll do anything to follow through with it. And then he has
Yeah.
this twisted way where he's like, I freed you, now you don't have to be afraid of anything, but it's like, no, you did something bad though. But what do you guys think? Like, am I
Yeah.
reading that wrong? Do you think he is more clear cut good guy, or do you
He
think he is an
well
asshole?
he well he is there is definitely gray shades to him as a character. Um and the biggest gray shade is the fact that he not only tortures Evie, but he lies to Evie, which is kind of makes her it kind of makes it worse because it really kind of messes up her mind and um but kind of the more it's kind of effed up too because he does kind of help her and she kind of admits it that
Yeah.
you did kind of help me. um so I in that sense, even though it's kind of a simplification, the ends justify the means in that scenario. um so but yeah, no, he's not a clear cut bad guy. He's kind of an anti-hero is what I
Hmm.
would say.
Did you just bring up him torturing her?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a total mind fuck. I mean, my I was like watching my buddy. He hasn't seen it in a while, and I was because he was like, oh, that sound because at the end because he made it not sound like his voice when he was torturing her and made it look like he was cheaty or whatever.
Yeah.
And at the end, when he was about to let her go, he's like, "That sounds like V." I'm like, "Oh, does it really?" And I was waiting to see his reaction, and I'm like, "That's a big twist." I mean,
Yeah.
and it goes to your point, Matt, that he's not fully good because that is like I guess you want if we delve into the reasons behind it, and he did really help her in the end. That's still pretty bad stuff he put
Yeah.
her through. Some
It's
bad
sort of
stuff.
a ends justifies the mean kind of thing where it's like he knew this would be some good result for her, or at least he thought so, you know.
Yeah.
Um yeah, that's a I mean it's a great the whole that whole part of the story is awesome.
Oh yeah.
I have
That
some
was so
nitpicks
good.
about it, but we can talk about that later.
Well,
Um
now what was the beginning? You said that he had people at the very beginning. He had people dress up like him.
so no,
Newsroom.
it was in the newsroom when he first sets the bomb up.
Oh,
There's a part where he has like hostages and he dresses them up like in him and then send him out and the cops see the guy and like shoot him and then when they pull the mask up it's just some dude who worked in the newsroom and I'm like damn,
Yeah.
this dude's cold blooded.
well, like you said, the end justifies the means, kind of thing.
Yeah,
On
I
that
think he
one.
was thinking of a greater good, which
Well, they're all evil there too, if you think about it. They're all working for the government. Most of them.
yeah.
Well, there's a difference between being evil and participating in evil. Um, but yeah,
Well, we
Bad as
gotta
bad,
we
good. Bad as bad, good as good.
but the same way that I mean, it's what makes a great villain is also what makes V a great hero or anti-hero, right? So it's like it's
yeah,
interesting. It's like because like the part when he's slowly systematically killing the people who worked at the camp that tortured him or whatever.
Oh, yep.
So remember he gets to the girl, the lady, the mortician or whatever, and she clearly long ago has felt total remorse for this situation. She knew he was going to kill her, and she almost hoped that he did because she's been
yeah,
living with the guilt of it, right? The fact that he's like, well, look, like you can tell that he feels like that he understands, like, oh, she is sorry. Like, I mean, I love that line actually in the movie when she says, "Is it pointless for me to say I'm sorry?" And he says, "Never." Great scene, but you're like, he could let her go. I think he knows, but he doesn't because he has this. He's like, I'm gonna get it's V for Vendetta, baby.
yeah,
He's got to get his vengeance, and it really reminds me. And we'll have to watch No Country for Old Men, and I won't say a lot of details. It's not any big spoilers, but Sterling, it really reminds me of the scene where he's waiting in the room for the girlfriend to show up. Do you know what I'm talking about? No
Ye-
Country. And the girlfriend's like,
yeah.
"Why do you have to do this? Like you can just
That's
not do
right.
it." And he's like, "No, I have to. Like I already made this has to happen." And that's why I kept making this weird similarity with that character. Um,
Sure. Well, I mean, that scene with the doctor is great because, again, it's the same result. He's going to kill her just like he's killed everyone else. But it is by far he does it in the most respectful way. She
Need her
dies a
mercy.
painless death.
Yep.
Um,
yeah,
and the way he talks to her is very respectful.
that's true.
So
Yeah,
again, there's a distinction there between all of his other killings. So
yeah,
it just makes it very interesting and insightful and gives the narrative some layers that are very very fascinating to watch.
And just a little cherry pick that needs to be popped. That scene when she is like, "It's you, isn't it?" or whatever. When he first shows up, I think that was a great shot with the moonlight comes through the window and you see just his mask because it's so dark. Ooh,
Yeah.
rock hard, baby.
Well, that's why I'm saying, like, I don't think this is like the greatest film ever. I just think it's so underrated because there are so many things it does well. It has good
Yeah,
cinematography, good writing with the so many quotable lines. Acting is great, not just from V, but like Natalie Portman is really good, especially in the scene in the rain. Um, and the emotions that she conveys, especially when she finds out she's been kind of messed with, just when she can't breathe, she has the asthma coming back. Um,
yeah, that
it
was
just
good.
does
That was a
things.
great. That was
It's a
good. Yeah.
quality film. Yeah, it's just a
It is.
quality
It's a
film.
good. It's better than it. It's almost better than it should be in a way because you can see where this movie could have been way worse. Do you know what I mean? Like there's something about
Yeah,
it where you're like this could have like and just to be clear at the beginning I like I said I didn't want to say the word dated but more like oh this movie's sort of a product of the era. But while because we're sitting here talking about it's the greatest movie ever, and I actually agree with everything. There's great cinematography, there's great stuff. There are just things and parts in this movie that are very much 2005 blockbustery thing. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of scenes where it's like I should have had my notebook so I could write down specific scenes, but there's a lot of stuff where it's like the where it's just too on the nose with like lines where it's like oh bloody hell and then like an explosion goes off like that sort of thing, you know what I mean, where it's like it's very action-y. That's those are the parts that made me feel like it had the feeling of an action movie, even though you're right there's maybe like a handful of combat scenes in the movie, right, like as far as action a
yeah,
couple explosions. But it's not even bad because like I was saying it with Christy because there's a couple of things like that in the movie where I was like I kind of love it, like it's kind of awesome because it's almost nostalgic because there's just certain things where you're like this feels like a movie from 2005, not in a bad way but just like there's something about the style and certain things that now almost seem a little cliche that maybe weren't as cliche back then.
yeah. Well, I think I think I can agree with you, especially like the beginning whenever it shows the kind of the flashback to I can't remember his name, but he's the guy that kind of started that saying, remember the 5th of
Oh
November."
yeah, yeah, Guy
Um, like
Fawkes.
that did feel, yeah, and you hear, Natalie's narration as you're seeing kind of history unfold, and then it goes into the title screen. That did feel a little kind of 2005.
Yeah.
Just kind of the graphics of it with the fire and
Yeah,
um,
yeah, a little, yeah,
I can see what you're saying for
yeah. It's
sure.
it's interesting because
Um,
it's not even really bad. It's not bad. It's just like it's just like anything. You might watch a movie from the '50s and go, "Oh, it's interesting that they did stuff this way." It might be a masterpiece
sure.
movie, like a Hitchcock movie or something, but you're still like, "Oh yeah, they did. This is what was like. This was like break. This was
Or
cinema at the time."
Yeah, or when he throws the knives and it shows kind of the trails of the
Yeah,
knives.
yeah.
I feel like we don't really see that too much anymore.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a couple of times where it's like there's like a million tiny nitpicks, but I can't do them because a part of it is that movie logic thing where it's like sometimes you just have to accept like this is the movie. And this is where I accepted some of the stuff. Like, well, and I have an example. So when he first brings Evie to the roof and the thing explodes, at the on top of Big Ben or whatever, he says she what is it? What is it he says?
Talks about Lady Liberty or something,
What does
right?
he say right before the explosion? Like she says something like it's oh no, she says it's no but she's like it's November 4th or whatever and then he goes not anymore. And then
And then it goes to
the bell,
midnight.
yeah, the midnight right then. Like that's like a very like movie thing where it's like, well, what if she didn't
Yeah.
because she goes, "Do you know what day it is?" And then she's like, November 4th, and he's like, not anymore, and then it dings, and it's like, that's a great
Yeah,
like movie moment, but it's a very movie moment, because you're like, well, what if she answered you
yeah,
wrong? I'm sure she's like, I didn't check, I don't know. But it's a movie,
for
and
sure.
part of it is like those moments though are almost stylistic though. It's almost like that's just the style of the movie, is that it has those moments.
Yeah.
Well, going back to what Sterling was saying, I mean about the writing. I mean the writing was so good, and it's back like, 5 years after, 6 years after the Matrix, the Wachowski brothers. Back then, what they were called, and don't laugh. Such a can you believe the fall from grace? Have you ever seen that in Hollywood? The fall from grace, that two one Matrix even more iconic, and V for Vendetta, a very iconic,
Yeah,
memorable movie. And
they just did the screenplay, right? I saw that in the credits.
well, they wrote it.
I forgot they had anything to do with this movie, and then the ending, and I saw the screenplay, and I was like, oh damn, they did
Yeah.
have another one, baby. They did have one more
No,
hit, baby.
They well they wrote it, but there are a lot of stories that say that they were very heavily involved in the direction as well.
Okay.
So
so that's even more credit to them because it was a no-name director, a new one, someone I never heard of before, and still haven't. I mean, um, no offense to the guy, whoever he
Yeah.
is, R.I.P. I don't know, but
he,
who knows?
he is
so
nostalgia. He's our one view. He's our like biggest fan.
Yeah.
now we're crapping on it.
Yeah.
No, my point is, it it doesn't remind me, but I don't know much about the book or the comic. I don't know what you call it. What would you call it? It's a
Graphic
comic book,
novel, I guess.
graphic novel.
Graphic novel. Yeah.
I don't know the source material, and I do not know the source material of um. Goodness gracious! Now I got the brain fart like you, Matt.
Watchmen.
Watchmen. I mean, I love Watchmen the movie, but I've heard the graphic novels even better. So this, I don't know what the comparisons are. I mean, I don't know if we can compare Watchmen the movie and V for Vendetta the movie and the graphic novel. How do they each compare? How well did each of them do to compare to the movie? So Sterling, as someone who's been reading the graphic novel, what do you say to that? How well has the movie done compared to the graphic novel?
Um, Without spoiling too much from the actual novel, there it definitely goes a lot deeper in some ways, with how the government works in the society. Um, it definitely goes deeper with how crazy V is and how kind of not clear cut, not just how not how clear cut of a good guy he is, but also the government. There's a little bit of shades of gray with the government, and it also goes deeper with how racist the government is. Like they're way more like racist. They're Nazis basically. In the graphic novel, which the movie does kind of touch on that, and I think even if
Vaguely.
the movie's kind of subtler, it's more subtle. You can kind of
Hmm.
piece together that they just like white people and they don't like gays, they don't like black people, um, stuff like that. So I think some of the choices that they decide not to use in this movie from the original source material, I think they did a good job kind of balancing that. They still stayed true to the overall core of the message of the story, um, but they cut out things that made it to where it works as a film for sure. So
Good.
it's a good adaptation, I would
That's
have to
it
say.
sounds like, I mean, from my viewing, it seems like it's exactly what a film adaptation should be, which is like I watch it as a film, and it's a great film by itself, like a standalone film that's fun to watch. I don't feel like I'm missing anything, but it makes me want to read the graphic novel.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's kind of sad though, because Alan Moore is kind of notorious for not liking any of his adaptations,
yeah.
any of the movies, and he actually he refuses to put his name on any of his adaptations.
Yeah.
So that's why you don't see his name on Watchmen or V.
Well, more money for the people that make the movies.
Yeah. Alan Moore for the rest of them. You know what I'm saying? No,
Hey,
I do like
but
Alan Moore
Alan
a
Moore,
lot, though. Yeah.
yeah, he's a genius when it comes to writing and
but not genius
crafting
with comic books.
narratives.
Yeah, yeah. He's kind of a weirdo, but yeah, his
He is.
he finds a way of like, yeah, he's a great writer, a great thinker in a way. Like, I mean, some of the
Hmm.
stuff in Watchmen, I've said before, I think like literally changed some of my like the way I looked at things, like my perspective on certain things. And I'm just watching a fucking blue dude with his penis out,
I was
talk,
gonna say,
contemplate life, you know.
seeing blue balls changes your life.
For real, dude. It
I
changed
said,
mine.
yeah. I will have
New
to say,
perspective.
V V for Vendetta is probably not my favorite of his works. It's probably still Watchmen for
Yeah,
sure.
I
I
I
think
want to
that's
read it.
his masterpiece. Yeah.
Watchmen was the one. Well, one of the things about Watchmen was people are like, "This is the best comic book of all time" or whatever. Everyone's always talking about it all the time. I really thought when I read it that I'd be disappointed, or like, this was okay, and then I really ended up going, oh, it was one of those things where you're like, oh, I see what people are talking about, which is always
Hmm.
great because usually you're set up for disappointment. But
Yeah.
yeah, but we should do
Uh,
Watchmen sometime as a review. By the way, I'd be really
okay. Oh yeah.
interested. The only time I've watched that movie, I was 14 years old and I fell asleep. Not because it was boring, but because I was really tired. So,
You saw
Yeah.
the blue sack
and I
and
closed my
leg,
eyes and pretended I was dreaming.
and
Uh,
you like saw it and you passed out like
Ah.
Lou from
Ah.
school.
You're my boy,
I
Blue.
okay.
I love that reference, by
I
the
do
way. That's another one we
recommend.
gotta watch.
I do recommend though that we watch the director's cut for Watchmen. That's my recommendation because
That's what I've
I
heard,
actually
baby.
think it's way better.
It keeps
I hope it's on HBO Max.
it keeps the whole allegory in, right? The whole raft thing, right?
That's the ultimate cut.
We should watch the ultimate cut.
That's almost 4 hours long.
I'm in.
So
Yeah, hey,
The Batman's gonna be 3 hours, so why not?
that's
we
true. That
watched.
is
It's
true.
3 hours. Oh my god! Get us, Christy. Get a seat next to the bathroom. Damn. I got,
Uh,
no. We watched the Snyder cut of the other thing. Let's watch the Snyder cut of Watchmen.
Yep.
Let's do it,
well, I don't
baby.
have it, so I hope it's on HBO Max.
It probably is.
So
If it is,
Yeah.
I
yeah.
mean, come on. If they don't have it on there, unsubscribe.
I
Um.
want to bring us back. Oh, do you have
Yeah.
something,
Sorry,
Sterling?
bring it back, baby.
Well, I was gonna bring something back, but Trey, you should go.
Okay, well, I'll take it. Uh, no, I was just gonna kind of what you were saying earlier, Sterling. A scene, a very iconic scene when she is hyperventilating, has to go outside, and she does the same stance, in the rain. And my buddy, who's like not really into movies, and is telling us we're all picking all these old movies, old fart movies, and he's over here, 80 years old, whatever.
It's halfway there, but yeah.
Yeah, he's halfway. More than anyway, he's halfway there. He brought a good point. He said they're opposites. He was born in the fire. She was born in the rain.
Yeah.
I'm like, what a good point.
It is it. That's a great point. But here's my nitpick. She walks out into the rain and goes. She goes, God is in the rain. There was a couple of times in this movie where you didn't have to say it. You could have shown it. Like, you didn't have to say the words. It worked. We know. We made the connection already. You cheesy motherfuckers.
that's a prickly pick. If I say those,
What did you call me? No, sorry.
prickly.
I didn't mean to.
Prick.
I didn't mean to rain on your rain. But
Oh.
and I'm back, baby.
Hey, Matt, I'll give you this. You are consistent because there's been many movies where they do something similar where you're like, why do they have to say it? And it doesn't bother Sterling and I.
Yes. I think the scene is great, but I have to, much like V, I have to stay true to my principles. I think
Yeah.
it didn't make any sense that she would say that out loud, But it's a
Well,
movie. It's a movie.
to me, I like it, but I
But
see,
but do
like,
you? But would
your
you?
principles.
Here's what
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
saying. Here's what I'm saying. There's other movies we watch where imagine we watch this movie. She didn't say God is in the rain. wouldn't it be interesting if we were talking about it and one of us goes, yeah, I really like that scene, and think about it. In the letter earlier in the movie, the girl said God is in the rain. Now she's out in the rain. Isn't that really interesting? It's not interesting now. She said it in the movie. It's not an interesting thing that we as an audience would
You're,
have connected.
you're giving too much credit to the audience.
Yeah. Fuck, I
I
wouldn't have
see what
figured it out. Shit.
No,
You're
you
right.
do. You do.
No,
You're
no.
one of the
I
few.
bought it. I bought it because she was saying it. She didn't say it like out loud. She was kind of it was kind of a realization,
Herself.
and in my opinion, the volume level was she was saying it to herself. That's how I took it.
Yes.
All
Yes.
right. Hey, comment below. Let me know.
Yeah,
You don't want that.
But-
No,
Matt.
no. It wasn't distracting. I'll say that. It was not distracting.
Yeah.
The scene worked fine with it. So
Despite that, that scene is probably my second favorite scene. I'll talk about my favorite scene later.
Oh
but
yeah.
woo!
my my
Her in that little
Anyway,
girl
that-
outfit.
no. That scene is just crafted so
Cut that
well. The music is so good, and visually, it's so pleasing to the eyes with the rain and the lightning. It really does feel like out of a graphic novel. Although that particular scene in the graphic novel is a little bit different, but they still kind of stay true to the kind of the core message of that scene.
There's, the scene cuts real quick to when she's leaving, obviously. And another thing that I wrote down that I thought was a great line too was when they're going back and forth, and he's like, "What they did to me was monstrous," and she comes right back with, "Well, then they created a monster." I'm like, goes with what Matt's saying. Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? He's a monster, but has good intentions.
Yeah, that's a good point about the monster thing. I think part of why he's so interesting is he is born from out of chaos, and you expect him to be a rage-filled, I'm gonna fucking kill everyone. And the fact that he went this like he is still that way, but the fact that personality-wise he went this very quirky, odd, meticulous, like. I think that's part of what's interesting is like typically the stereotype of this monster is there it's too on the nose. It's like it's like a Wolverine type, like rage guy, and it's like seeing him, it's like he is still kind of this monster and he has warped thinking and all of that. But the fact that he's appearance wise and the way he talks is so eloquent was an interesting juxtaposition.
Methodical.
Yeah. Which he honestly, the thing where he ties the people up at the beginning, there was a lot of times where, and I know I keep comparing this guy to other movies, but it reminded me a lot of Dark Knight. Like, honestly, some of the way even the way the movie looked and stuff, but a lot of the way he was so methodical and planned out everything. When it did get into those, I was like, this reminds me of the Joker a little bit, the opening scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Before I talk about my favorite scene, I think the only criticism, I think the only criticism I have of this movie is, I do think even though there is a lot of substance in this movie, I do think sometimes the pacing is a little too quick, and I think sometimes I wish it would kind of settle down a little bit more in some of the sequences to where I would actually kind of take a breath. There were sequences that did that. I just felt like a lot of times it would go snap, 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 like super quick. And it kind of felt like, oh, maybe add a little bit more meat to it. But that's probably because I've been reading the novel and there's a lot of meat in that for sure. But yeah, that's probably the only thing that I have, and it's not really that big of a criticism. It's just
Yeah.
kind of something that I noticed watching it.
I agree with that a little bit. I'll add a little bit to it and it's only probably because it's one of those movies that could probably have an extra 30 minutes to it. It didn't quite, the time of the movie didn't quite flesh out to where it's a year, right? Between when he first meets Evie and the next year. It moves pretty quick to where you get that time passed and you understand it, but it did sometimes feel like, because everything was moving quick, that like if I didn't know it was a year, this movie could have taken place in 2 weeks, other than her being in prison. But a lot of the events, the whole thing's taking over the course of a year, but it does kind of feel like the events are happening quickly together. So maybe if they
Hmm.
had a little more of those meaty little spots in between, it might have felt more like time was passing.
Yeah. Yeah. Trey, do you agree with us or are you wrong?
What's that?
That was a trick
Oh,
question. Do you agree
Yeah.
with us or are you wrong?
Repeat the question again. Now I'm
look,
confused.
it's a loaded question and it doesn't mean anything. Just give us your opinion. What is one criticism you have of this movie, if you have any?
Oh, well, like I said earlier, I mean, you were right. You're right. He's in it almost a perfect amount, but because they did so well with the actor Hugo Weaving and the character, you want it did its job. You wanted more from that character. Um, and for me, being I want to watch this more often. It's a longer movie. It's not short, but it's not long. It's like just a little over 2 hours. There, they could have cut a little meat off of it. I mean, there's some scenes I can't tell you specific ones, maybe one or two, maybe 5 or 10 minutes they could have cut off. Um, or like Sterling, you're saying because you know the graphic novel a little more than us, a lot more than us. Make it a series. I like 6 part series and really flesh out the material because, like I said, I don't know what's missing from it or all that. But for me, like I said earlier, I think it's close to a masterpiece. I love this movie. Like I said it earlier, the writing is so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think this was, a lot of times they were like, we're going to bring something back and make it like a mini series. This would be one, and because of the fact that, a lot of times they do that and people are disappointed because it's not the same thing or whatever. I feel like this movie is like, it's mainstream enough, people know about it, but it's not like a mega hit that like everyone constantly talks about. So I feel like it could have like a good comeback as a new series if they took the time with it. I could see it like, you know, I would I,
They did
I
it
would
with
be I would
Watchmen.
be interested, yeah.
They did it with
They did
Watchmen.
it. They did a Watchmen. Yeah, like if they did a Watchmen series, I don't have any
But
doubt at some
the
point
Watchmen series.
they're gonna.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying I don't have any doubt that they would do a V for Vendetta series if they
Yeah.
did a Watchmen series because that there was a big gap between the movie Watchmen and this recent TV show, which it was a sequel, mind you. It wasn't an adaptation of the Watchmen book, but still.
It I really hope that V is like, how in the Injustice games they have like DLC characters, and like Mortal Kombat they have all these DLC characters. It's DC, it's Vertigo. They had Hellboy in Injustice 2. When they make Injustice 3 the video game, baby, I want a V for Vendetta DLC. That would be fucking
Oh,
awesome. What if
that would be.
what if they like, nah, never mind. I was gonna say, what if
What?
You
I
can't do that, bud.
don't. No, it'd be kind of cool if they. I think V is a cool enough character that I would think it would be cool if he showed up in as like a like if he was in some other DC movie as like a side character or something. But
Oh yeah.
I know that it's not like he's not part of the DC universe or anything. It's like a separate thing, but
Yeah.
I just like his character
What
a lot, so.
I do too, and it is pretty subtle in the movie, but there are definitely some hints that whatever experiments were done to him pretty much made him a superhuman with super abilities,
I guess
is what
so.
I
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of
At the
got.
beginning, I thought that too. The very first fight scene, he punches a guy and he flies into the wall, and that was one of those things. I was like, is this just action movie or is he supposed to be superhuman? And he must be to some extent because even
Yeah.
though he had the bulletproof vest, he's in his you know chest, he still got shot the fuck up and
Yeah.
and didn't collapse, which is an awesome scene. I was waiting for that to be kind of cheesy, and it was like one of those things that it was ended up just being cool. Like it's like you can't really
Oh,
deny it. It's just a
it's
badass
so
scene.
cool. It's a very well shot action, which I don't know why they couldn't do that in a new Matrix movie, but whatever. Uh any anyway, yeah, and there's one of the best lines is in that sequence as well. Whenever he kills everyone, and then Creedy is just terrified and he's shooting him. He's like, "Why won't you die?" And
Yeah,
then he just comes up to him, chokes him out. And he's like, "Because I'm
my ideals.
paraphrasing, but yeah, he's an idea, and ideas are bulletproof, and that's such a
Yeah,
great theme to the whole thing.
That scene is so good. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a cool scene. And it,
I mean,
but it's also
sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that it was also kind of a cool callback because before he gets shot up, Mr. Creedy's like, "What do you think's gonna happen here?" And he's like, "We're both going to die." And he's like, how's that gonna happen? With my hands over your neck. It's like,
Yeah.
God
yeah,
damn, he's
Woo!
confident.
and he made him squirm in his pants. I mean, oh, oh, well, how, like Sterling, you said, how the heck could they not do something even halfway as decent as that today in the new Matrix than they did 17 years ago? That's
Whoa, whoa,
so
whoa,
I
whoa!
know.
Spoilers,
embarrassing.
spoilers, spoilers.
Spoilers,
You haven't
what?
watched it yet?
Matrix. I haven't seen it. Is there the new Matrix?
Oh,
Matrix 4?
I didn't say
Haven't
any
seen it.
spoilers. I just said the act about the action, but okay.
Whoa, 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 whoa! I
So
want to be surprised whether the action's bad. All right.
I don't think it's as
okay,
bad
I'm
as
okay.
just
people
kidding. I'm
say.
sorry. I'm just kidding.
Whatever.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Anyway,
I
my
didn't know you
point is,
hadn't seen it.
it's such a good scene from beginning to end, and I like the slow mo. You maybe calling it cheesy with the blades going through the air, but the blood.
I thought
I
it looked
mean,
good. Yeah. I thought the blood
Yeah.
was great. And it was like a perfect amount in the movie.
Hmm.
But yeah, the
and
blades look
to
a
the
little
point,
weird, but it doesn't ruin. Like that's what I was gonna say. Is like it's surprising that that's one of those scenes where I'm like, this could have been really bad and it could have aged really horribly, and it didn't. It's a cool scene still.
well, to your guys' point, like kind of you're like, well, is he a superhero? Like, is he super strength? In that scene, you don't know he has the metal plate under his shirt, and they could have just not had him take it off and make you think like, how did he do that? But
Yeah.
they do show him slow mo take it off. Or, oh, okay, that's how he did that. But still, he's getting shot in the arms, and he's still wheeling knives and lifting him up, against the fence. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like a
Well, he
supernatural
obviously,
scene.
oh yeah. Well, he obviously has the ability to take a lot of punishment. I mean,
Mhm.
he survived a freaking explosion. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Fire, yeah.
I just think it's interesting how subtle it is that, and that's kind of the comic booky side of it too. The fact that he is kind of a superhuman with super strength and super endurance. So,
Yeah. I mean, so what
um,
about the ending? I
yeah,
mean, there's two, I guess there's one ending, but the cop lets her do it, lets her finish the job because like she says in the movie, he's right. And they let it go. And what a good scene, too, about the military is they can't get a hold of the command and do we shoot these people or not? Such a cool scene, them walking through the military, bumping into
yeah.
just as and they're all like in shock, and I just love that scene
Mm.
because it makes you feel
Oh
like
yeah,
tense.
Woo.
yeah.
Yeah.
The crowd coming together. Also, it was really good planning by V, how he kind of plotted Creedy against the Chancellor.
Mhm.
Um, like he really played up their rift, the
Yep.
way he just kind of like
Yeah.
manipulated all that to where Creedy would kill him.
I
And that, yeah,
I do think they could have fleshed that out a little more, and the only reason I say that is the chancellor being there and getting killed happens kind of fast enough that I was like, is this not the real chancellor? Or are they tricking him? And then it took me a while to go, oh no, that was the chancellor. He's dead. It just was kind of like anticlimactic in a way, which I'm sure was part of the
hmm,
intention. But the yeah,
John
anyway.
Hurt, man.
Woo, baby.
well,
The
before we
Elephant
talk more
Man.
about the ending, because I do want to talk more about it. I wanted to bring up my favorite kind of scene sequence of the whole movie, and
It wasn't the knife scene. Oh, okay.
All
All
right.
right.
no, no, because for me, It has cool action, good writing, but the scene that really stuck out to me was when Evie is reading the letter written by Valerie, and I thought the way the narration was done in that scene was very well done. Whoever the actress was, I thought did a good job kind of conveying just the overall kind of emotion and her retelling her life story. And I just felt like that was kind of the emotional heart of the movie was that sequence. And it obviously that's what drove V to carry out his vendetta. And yeah, I don't know. Just for me, I got emotional watching that part of the movie for sure. Um, because just the cruelty that was done to people like that in this story, um, I just thought it was effective.
I could see that. I could see that. You know me,
You disagree?
well, I don't, I'm not a big, let's just say, I yawned a couple times during that scene. All right. Let's
Yeah.
just say I checked the watch a few times, but, no,
Yeah,
it was fine. It was fine. It didn't affect me as much, but I think, I understand why it did though. I do think that was one of the more emotional, and I think that it was heartbreaking. The story, I do think the story was heartbreaking, and a good enough where you go, oh, okay, I can see why that would be. I don't know if inspiring is the right word, but for V,
So,
yeah.
I don't know
so
why she would reach into a rat hole to grab it, but
or
I got a lot of
um
nitpicks about that whole sequence, but
or or where did she get the Ziploc bag to put it in the toilet?
yeah, I
So
actually was confused, and I thought maybe I just missed something because I was like, "What did she grab?" I was like, "Christy, what did she just grab?" And she was like, "I guess a pencil." What? I was like, "What?" She was like, "What was that?" But I was like, "Okay." And I was just like, at this point in the movie, I was like, "There's a lot of little things like that." I'm like, "Whatever." There was a pencil in the
Yeah,
toilet. All
yeah.
right, I guess I'll just accept that.
Yeah.
so the one thing I'm confused about the ending, like the last 3 minutes or whatever. So I understand how V or the cop when the cop is saying what he thinks could happen or will happen, and the little girl is spray painting or marking something on the wall, and one of the fingermen, what a weird name, shoots her, kills her. I understand that him saying that doesn't make it real. So when we see the little girl and when we see Evie's friend who gets taken in front of her like just like her mom did is alive, I understand that part because they took him away, interrogated him, whatever. You're a bat, whatever. But V tells her he died, but I can see how he's alive. I see how the little girl's alive because it was the policeman telling a story of what could happen. What I don't understand is them showing the lesbians alive.
Yeah, that's because you know what it is. This is what you're not allowing yourself to comprehend that it's cheesy, and that what they're trying to show is that V is you and V is me and V's my uncle and my grandma and also you. They're trying to show that like, oh, these character people who died are also part of this revolution. It's cheesy.
Well, they're alive at the end, so
No,
I'm
no,
going with they're
yeah,
alive.
okay, fine. So then the movie's broken. You either have to say the movie is broken and that it doesn't make any sense that the lesbian's alive, or you have to admit what they're trying to say is that hey, these people were just as much part of this revolution as the rest of them. It's a representation, and you could say it's not cheesy, but I thought it was a little cheesy.
I agree, it's cheesy, yeah, but yeah, I
But
don't know. Oh yeah, good Sterling's the icebreaker. It's
Sterling,
icebreaker.
come on, what's going on? Well, actually, I don't even
It
think we
didn't take
What's
disagree.
the novel say?
I don't think we disagree actually, but no, I was with you though because I would have just thought, oh, I okay, there's that person because it showed yeah, like you said, it showed Stephen Fry. I'm like, okay, I guess he's alive, but then
Yeah.
it showed I'm like that's definitely the girl from that's Valerie, and then I was like,
Yeah.
but then and I didn't really like the line because it's one of those things that's obvious in the movie, and great filmmaking is where you shouldn't have to always point out what the movie's conveying. And I think that when she has to say, he's my father, he's my mother, he's my uncle, he's my nephew, he's me or you. Maybe that works in a book more, but in the movie I was like, I was feeling that message. You didn't necessarily have to say it to me because I already kind of understood what they were showing. I don't think it's bad. It was fine. I'm not like necessarily saying it was a bad line or anything. But then I think they were showcasing that even more by showing all these other people who stood up against the
Yeah.
Third Reich.
It didn't really take me out of it. That's just kind of my
It
preference,
didn't
I
take me
guess.
out of it, but I
What?
just thought it
That's not
was,
the question.
yeah. Was it cheesy? I think is what we're asking.
Oh, not
No,
me.
I
I
didn't
have
think it
different
was
questions.
cheesy. I That's what I mean. Like
Okay.
I didn't even think for 1 second it was cheesy, but
All
that's just a
right.
preference thing.
The real
So,
question is,
Matt,
what's your question, Trey?
I agree. If it is what you think it
Okay.
is definitely really cheesy. We disagree
I
that
see.
you think it's just a message.
Okay.
I think it's saying
They
because,
are
like I said,
actually alive.
when the girl died, he was just saying what could happen, or
Okay.
you know,
Yeah, yeah, I see what you're saying.
and
It's a lie, and that
because yeah, because well, my point is with the girl, it's all quiet during the day. If that girl died, they would be rioting, just like what they showed in his
okay, that's
vision.
true.
So
And also, you made a good point. They never showed Stephen Fry's character die. They just showed him take him away. So
yeah,
and then we actually don't know because V lies constantly to Evie. There's no reason he's not. He's like, that actually was the real note that I found in the cell. It's like,
yeah.
why would you believe? Why would you have to believe that? Maybe he did concoct that, and he needed her to believe it was real in order for her to have hope or whatever.
So that
Damn,
would be
you know what?
the
You're
question
convincing
to
me.
Sterling. Well, that'd be the question to Sterling though. So my question is, I was confused as to why the lesbians were there if that was her letter and she like they were there. The girlfriend died and she was dying. So Sterling, what do you think about are the is Matt right that they are just a message or a cheesy message of everybody the fight is in everybody, or are they alive and it was all a lie?
I think it's a stylistic choice by whoever directed it. Um,
What does that mean?
you
Yeah,
know,
Explain what you're saying.
that's not an answer.
Jesus, that's not
yes, it
me.
is. It's an answer because it's literally conveying what the message is through a
Okay,
visual story.
but
Whatever. Like
you don't think they're actually alive. You think they actually did
no,
die? Okay.
yeah, but I can't necessarily prove that because you're right. The V did lie before in the story, but I
Yeah.
just think I
It is cheesy.
this movie did other things too that was kind of more like stylistic more than
Yeah.
like factual storytelling.
Yeah.
There's the scene where the detective goes to St. Mary's
Mhm.
and he talks about how
He
when
has
he
like
was in
vision.
kind of the quarantine zone, he has a vision and he can see everything happening at once. And
Mhm.
you see it for a quick moment, a future scene where V is getting shot. Um,
Yeah.
so, that was the stylistic choice because I don't think he was necessarily seeing V getting shot. I just think that was a stylistic choice showing, what's going to happen in the movie, both in the past and in the future. So I just think it's up to interpretation.
Well,
Thank you for the non-answer.
no, he did. He answered it. But I will say this. I was kind of, joking or whatever. But, I mean, I wasn't joking about the thing. But legitimately, Trey, I think this could be a great fan theory that we're concocting here. Because it's actually really interesting that specifically the people it shows, they're all people who we didn't confirm dead, and that except for Valerie, and she's the only person that the only thing we know about her is told from V, who is known to lie.
Yeah,
This is very interesting.
it's very. Oh, I love it. I love it. See, that's what movies are
I
great.
know that. Well,
There's
it's a great, yeah. When there's that, it's when you can just keep talking and talking. We're almost at the
yeah.
hour mark. Do we want to do quick nitpicks and
Do
closers?
your nitpicks, bro. I'm already.
This is like a vague nitpick. So you like and before, because I know you guys, don't get me wrong here, okay? Don't get it twisted. The scene where she's locked in the thing, and it ends up being V who's doing it, who's holding her
Okay.
prisoner, is
Yeah.
very cool. I like it story wise and everything, but there's just on like a practical level, there was just ways that I was like, this doesn't quite hold up or make sense to me. And here's where it did a couple times. And this might just be, this could just be the lighting is off or something, right? But like, it isn't it. I know that it's him doing the voice is right. But there's times where maybe I had the brightness up too high on the TV when it's in the doorway. So there's two people that are talking to her when she's being interrogated. It's supposed to be what's his name, the blonde guy,
Greedy.
Greedy, right? Now we know that the guy works a little bit in he does hair pieces and stuff. His body is even the guy's body. Now is he wearing a fat suit too? Why would he need to impersonate Greedy? There's no reason for him to do that. He could be anybody who she thinks is an upper person. She doesn't fucking know who Creedy is. Like, he doesn't need to. And then, too, one of the other guys who's also on the council, who was a skinnier, like, guy with the brown eyes and the brown hair, he's in the doorway talking to her. The lighting is too good. It's clearly actually that actor. And so you could just say, well, the movie's trying to trick you as an audience member. It's not what she's seeing. It's supposed to be, you're supposed to see from her perspective, this is what she's assuming. But I mean, it just doesn't quite add up. When her hair's getting cut, she never looked up. Who's the guy cutting my hair? I mean, like it's a brightly lit room. Was he wearing a sack over his head in that scene? I mean, so here's what I'm saying. It works when you don't know what's happening. But I remembered from the first time watching that he was the prisoner, and so I was paying attention. And when you do it through that lens, you're like, this is not holding up. It holds up story-wise. It's just specifically it on film didn't work. I imagine in the graphic novel, you're not seeing the characters. You're not seeing that like clearly that it's the outline of these actors. And also, I also didn't quite understand why she reached into a rat hole. Why would anyone do that? Why would you reach into a fucking rat hole? I just don't get that. But like I said, it's a little vague of a nitpick. It was more my feeling of like, and if I, you know what, I don't remember knowing that. I think that was a big twist. And the first time I watched it, I didn't catch it. I think it was only the second time. So I know I'll get torn apart in the comments by the super fans, but I just think that it was something. It was like a tough one to pull off as far as like her somehow not noticing that it was him.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, from a practical standpoint, I can.
yeah,
Yeah,
purely
I mean, what you're
practical.
saying is
It's not a story criticism at all. I love that happens. It's very interesting. Nitpick.
I mean,
No,
maybe she wanted to eat the rat. I don't know. Like that's why she was trying to.
maybe so.
But I mean,
maybe so.
well, she obviously heard something.
There's a
and
rustling. There was
it,
a rustling.
it plays out the same way in the graphic novel where she reaches into
Yeah.
the rat hole to get the letter. So
Yeah, it's not too. It's a good sequence, and I apologize for shitting on it.
that,
I,
dude,
I I have littler like tiny
come on.
nitpicks here and there, but I can't
Any
remember
funny
them
ones?
off the bat. It's oh yeah, this is a interesting one. Well, first of all, I have a couple of cherry picks in the movie. I thought it was interesting. Stephen Fry, who plays the gay guy who's undercover gay, it felt like he was basically playing himself, the actual actor Stephen Fry, just in the future. Didn't it kind of feel like that? Like I was like, I could see Stephen Fry legitimately having these opinions, talking this way, having the hidden room. Anyway, that character was awesome, mostly because I've been crushed too many times in movies where they have a character who the girl thinks she can trust and they betray her, So the fact that he was a good guy to the end, I was so glad that actually happened because I was like, I kept thinking he was going to
Yeah.
be like trick her or turn her in or something. I was really glad that he
He
actually
has some
was
good
like
lines too.
yeah, he had great lines in the movie. He was one of the best characters. And yeah, he was great. But his TV show, when he does, which was really great, where he satirizes the guy. Here's my nitpick. I was a little the great scene once again, but here's my nitpick.
Yeah.
What it was
Kind of
John.
special effects they have.
It was John Hurt. It was John Hurt. I looked
Oh yeah,
closely. It was clearly John Hurt.
yeah.
And they didn't explain. They didn't like the only reason I would have thought it was actually supposed to be the Chancellor on the show, except that I was watching the movie in subtitles, and when the Chancellor talked, it said "fake Chancellor." I would have obviously figured out that it was bullshit, by the end of the scene. But I was like, oh, that's cool. Is it someone in prosthetics or fake makeup or something? I'm like, no, that's him. I was like, I don't understand. I guess it's deep
Yeah.
fake. That's why I'm gonna have to go with they were doing deep fakes because it was in the future, 1997.
You
It's
might not be wrong.
it's
I
a
mean,
nitpick. It's a nitpick. There's an explain. You can explain it by saying, well, they were using some technology in the media. They probably have really good technology considering they're bullshitting all the time.
Prosthetic
Yeah,
makeup.
yeah. So I accept
It
it,
would.
but that
I,
was actually a great scene, and the fact that he just did
yeah.
that, like knowing that he would probably get executed for it, was badass.
yeah.
Oh, it's
I, you know,
badass and like, oh, go ahead, Matt or
I,
Trey. Go ahead, Trey.
I was gonna say I just liked that it was John Hurt.
Yeah,
Like they didn't just they just threw him in there.
they're like, fuck it, like it's him. Yeah, it's a fake
They
guitar.
didn't even
It's a
try to
fake.
use fake prosthetics or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, but anyway, so nitpick, but I just thought that was an interesting thing because I was confused for a second, like during that scene. But yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
other than that, I will just. What? Oh, one last thing I'll say before we do the closers is we didn't really talk much about the detective. I really like the detective character, and I think it's because V is a very interesting character, although he's sort of so ambiguous. And then obviously Evie's sort of the main character because she's going through this evolution. But I also think that the detective should not be undercut as such a central part of the movie because I just really liked his character. I actually liked the actor a lot as well. He had some like really good scenes.
Hmm.
And I like the idea that he was part of it. He's on the count. He's talking to the chancellor. He's part of that team, and that moment at the end when he lets the girl go because he has seen firsthand all this stuff that most people will never see. The fact that they, all the shady shit they're doing. Anyway, great character. So
Yeah. Well, give final thoughts. Do we want me to start, or do you want me to finish?
I'll go. So I had this on my list, so I appreciate Sterling bringing it up and having us do it a little earlier than we probably would have, and we'll eventually do Watchmen, so I can't wait to do that. But this, like I said earlier, I love this movie. The more I watch it, the more I like it. Like I keep on saying, I love the writing, the actors in it that did such a good job in their roles. The character of V, so good. The action when there is action, so good. I mean, to me, there's not much to Matt's side of the coin pick at for me, and you know. So I love this movie. I can't wait to watch it again. And man, it just says so much to the past and to the present. I mean, not at the time in 2005 when it came out, but it especially now it speaks a lot. And I love this movie.
I if you cut it the right way, you could even say you could make it look like I turned heel on this movie. I did not. It's
You
one of
did.
the few
You
movie.
did.
It's one of the few movies I think where instead of me just going, this didn't make sense, this was stupid or whatever, most of the nitpicks I had, I started off by saying this was a great scene, which I think is a testament to it. Where I was like, this was actually really cool. Here's this little thing. Um, I think the best I can say is what I said earlier was the best adaptation of something as a film to me is when it stands alone as a great film by itself, where you don't feel like you need to. You just get the story in one film, but it was good enough that it made me really want to read the graphic novel as well, which I think is really high praise because it's very rare. There's not a lot of times where that gets pulled off very well. So kudos for that. I think that yeah, I think this is one of those little. I wouldn't want to say hidden gem because I know it's people know about the movie, but I do feel like it doesn't quite always get the credit. When you're talking about the early 2000s, you just don't really hear V for Vendetta come up on a lot of those movies. So I think it deserves more credit because it is great.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, I don't have much else to say. Sterling?
Yeah, well, I picked this movie because it definitely was one of the first films that kind of caught my eye early into my film critique history. I don't know what you want to call it, but it's one of the first like really good films that kind of made me love film as a thing to study and as a thing to pursue. So yeah, this movie does so many good things. The soundtrack is really good at points of the movie. Acting is good. Um, and the messages I think are very relatable and are very, very fascinating and intriguing. And even though there's not like a whole lot of like combat or like, blow up action, I think the movie's pacing makes it a lot more exciting. It feels like an action movie. And I don't think anyone could really get bored watching this. I mean, I can understand maybe a little bit. There's a lot of like dialogue and kind of political themes in it, but I think the pacing does a good job to where it you'd have to really not want to watch this movie to be bored by it, in my opinion. So yeah, overall, one of my favorites, and I think I think everyone should at least watch it once. Like I always say when I like a movie. So that's about it.
Woo.
Oh man. Well, what
Also,
a
I sorry, I just wanted to say real quick. I'm sorry. Um, a fun fact about this movie is that Hugo Weaving was not the original actor for V. It was actually James Purefoy, and they were actually 4 weeks into shooting the movie, and
Yeah.
he dropped out. So Hugo Weaving is actually not in the mask. It's just his voice. They dubbed his
Yeah,
voice
I'm
over
I'm glad you
the original
said that.
actor.
I brought that up to Christy, but I was like, is this real? Because for some reason I was thinking that. I was like, I don't know if it was him doing like movements, a lot of it. But yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
yeah,
That's just
I
a
wouldn't have
testament to how good he did, though. I
Yeah.
mean, you really do feel like he is in the costume.
Yeah, for real.
Um, but
Shout out to
yeah, it's kind of like
Hugo.
a yeah, that guy's voice is a heaven sent for sure.
yeah, I loved him in Endgame. Um so I appreciate that movie trivia. Sterling, that was great. Well, thanks for joining us here on the Film Schmucks. I mean, we're just a bunch of schmucks talking about a movie. If you liked it, you subscribe, please. Comment below. Nostalgia! Are you nostalgic about this? Come on now. All right. Check us next time on the Film Schmucks.
Cut it.
Bye.